Lights, camera, action.
And the winner is...
Welcome back to the Oscar Reel Movie Podcast. How are you doing? You just woke up from a nap. This is Matt and Haley, by the way, per usual, in case you need to say our names. So, and if you can hear a dog click-clacking in the background, that's our dog, Toby.
It's a mess. We're off to a really good start.
This is the earliest I think we've ever recorded, like in the day.
In the day? Yeah, I think so.
It's a little bit before, like 1:30 or something like that. So our dog is awake and wanting to play. Hey, buddy. He's usually asleep when we record, so you might be hearing that. But you just woke up from a nap. How are you doing?
Yep, I feel good. Yeah.
Energized?
Naps are great. Yep.
Ready to watch the Packers win today?
I think they're going to lose, so we'll see how it goes.
Expectations, keep them low.
Yep.
That's all right.
Exactly.
All right. We're off to a great start here today. We got a couple new trailers, superhero related, to talk about. We'll recap some of the Golden Globes, reactions, surprises, whatever, what have you, that happened. We'll go over Richard Jewell, which was pre-recorded, but we'll pop that in there. And then our Best Picture winner was the 1967 winner, In the Heat of the Night. So we'll break down that movie, and then we'll close out with, who we think will be nominated for Academy Awards, some of the bigger categories, because those come out on Monday. So we'll drop this pod either Sunday night or Monday morning, and we'll see how close we get with our predictions. All right, so first segment of the day, we got the trailer park. A little low on the trailer park today, only 2 trailers to talk about, but both superhero related. Which one did you want to talk about first?
Let's start with Birds of Prey first. This one will be coming out February 7th, so I figure let's talk about this one first. This one's coming out a little sooner. So Birds of Prey is a movie about Harley Quinn from the DC universe, and this seems like it's part of the Suicide Squad universe. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're all... Suicide Squad is connected with Justice League, Batman v Superman, Man of Steel, Wonder Woman. So yeah, it's...
part of that whole
I assume
universe.
It is, because it stars Harley Quinn, or it stars Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, and
Yep.
she played Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad. I assume it is, but the reason I'm saying that instead of guaranteeing it is because James Gunn is making a Suicide Squad movie where she is in it as Harley Quinn, and a lot of the same cast members from Suicide Squad are going to be in it again. But he is saying that movie is not connected to the DC universe. It is already a reboot of Suicide Squad.
Oh my gosh! Why does DC feel like such a mess?
It is. You can look at it 2 ways, right? It's either it's just a mess and negative, or you can look at it, they're trying, things don't have to be connected for it to be tried and maybe good.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
Because Joker is not connected to any of this, and a lot of people would call that a success. So, But anyways, back to Bird of Prey. I assume this is kind of a sequel, because they reference Joker, and it seems like it's the same Harley Quinn. So.
Yeah. No, I never saw Suicide Squad.
It was terrible.
I would say they're mixed reviews. I know you went and saw it. And honestly, seeing this trailer, we watched this last night. I'm like, well, that looks like a hot piece of garbage. I think it looks terrible. It's not up my alley at all. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it doesn't. I think it'll be an improvement on Suicide Squad, which I'm not going out too much of a limb there saying that, but I think it'll be better. But I agree, it looks kind of like a mess. Just the dialogue. I mean, you said it. What kind of accent is Harley Quinn supposed to have, or Margot Robbie supposed to be using? It looks really. This looks like a comic book movie that would have been made in the 90s almost, where it's Harley Quinn is dressed up in a trench coat and these sunglasses and a hat, and it's her asking, she's robbing the bank in that outfit.
Yeah.
And doing this weird accent, and then she just takes the trench coat off, and it's her usual suit. That just seems like a real comic booky thing to do in the 90s, not so much today. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, it doesn't look great to me. Even explosions in it are colorized. It just has a very, what am I trying to say?
I don't know. It has a different look than I think we've seen in more recent.
Yeah. It has a look that reminds me more of a bad comic book movie than a good comic book movie. Because good comic book movies these days have more of that realistic tone to it.
Okay.
Versus this. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as like other characters, other people starring in it, like you said, Margot Robbie's back as Harley Quinn. Ewan McGregor's in this as the character Black Mask, and it looks like he's some sort of villain in the story.
Yeah, that's what they show it a little bit. Him as a villain. I'm not too growing up. I was more of a Marvel kid, not as much. On the DC side of things, but Black Mask is a villain from the comic books. He was more of a Batman villain back in the day, so I guess they're, because it's Harley Quinn and the Joker, and it's more on the Batman side of things, that's why they're going that route. But, yeah, I don't know. I like Ewan McGregor a lot. I'm more excited to see him coming back as Obi-Wan than in a Bird of Prey DC comic book movie.
Yeah, it looks like there are a number of other female characters coming into this. The only person I recognized was Journey Smollett, and she comes in playing Black Canary, and she was she played Jess Merriweather in the TV show Friday Night Lights, which I loved. So I haven't seen much from her, so I'm kind of excited that she's doing more. She's starring in more things, but this is not something I'm excited to see. So kind of mixed emotions on seeing her back on the screen, I guess.
Yeah, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is someone I know from a couple movies. I think she was in like Scott Pilgrim versus the World and a couple things like that. So,
and who does she play? Who is her character?
She plays Huntress. So this is basically, it's kind of similar to Suicide Squad. It's a ragtag team of female characters, superheroes, villains, all that, and they're going to take down the same person in Black Mask. They all have a connection to him, a vendetta against him. I think one of the characters is a cop who is trying to build a case against him. So that's the common thread in this, and they're going after him. And this was a comic book run. It may or may not still be going on when DC did their rebirth a couple of years ago. Birds of Prey was a run that was going on, but I didn't read it, so I'm not sure if this is a story that was pulled from the comics or not.
Okay.
But that seems to be the basis of where this movie's coming from.
Yeah. So like I said, this one's coming out in February. It's not on my list. I don't know if you have any interest in seeing it, but...
No, just because I was excited to see Suicide Squad when it came out, and I went to see it in theaters, and it definitely disappointed me. So DC, while they've come up with some good movies recently, they've won me over a little bit. But because this is basically directly connected to Suicide Squad, I'm going to wait and see the reviews on this one before I make an opinion on whether I'm going to see it or not.
All right, that's fair. The other, like I said, kind of comic book related movie we have this week in the trailer park is New Mutants, which is set to come out April 3rd, and this one's taken a while to get to theaters, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to look up and see when the first trailer was dropped for this movie, because I feel like it was 2 years ago. I'm probably exaggerating that.
It's been a while, though. Because when I saw this new trailer came out, I thought, gosh, hadn't this movie already come out? Like, I've already seen a trailer for this, but this was like years ago. So, yeah, I would think it was probably a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm looking on IMDb, or not IMDb, sorry, YouTube. It was dropped October 13th, 2017.
Oh my gosh, that was more than 2 years ago.
It was more than 2 years ago was when the first trailer for this movie was dropped. And I remember watching the first trailer, and this was this was pre-Fox buying, or pre-Marvel buying out Fox.
Okay.
So this was still the X-Men universe is going on. This was going to be connected to it, and this was going to be more of a horror film take on X-Men. I don't know if you remember watching that first trailer. There's a lot of horror themes going on.
Yes, exactly.
All these kids mutants are locked in a hospital, kind of a mental hospital or something along those lines, a creepy looking place. It's always, dark out, cloudy, whatever. And these faces are coming in from the walls, and it's a lot of jump scares are in that trailer.
Yeah.
So this second one has some of those similar tones, but you get a lot more of their powers in it or superhero themes in the trailer. And I'll tell you, for a movie that has gone through as much as this has gone through, and the first trailer was dropped more than 2 years ago, I'm excited to see this movie. I want to see this movie. This trailer kept me excited, which is, I think, a good sign.
Yeah.
For how much it's gone through.
Yeah, and I would say in terms of comic book stories, comic book movies, I've always loved the X-Men. I think it's really cool, and I think it's I know it's not been the most successful franchise of movies, the most successful series, but yeah, I've always loved the X-Men stories. And
I would say more than half of their movies have been good, though. They have some stinkers,
yeah,
at least 2, but for the most part, I would call it a fairly successful movie franchise.
Yeah, so it's, I've always enjoyed seeing those movies, and you're right, this one still has more of a horror type feel to it. It's not like it takes place at the, Charles Xavier School or anything. Like you mentioned, it takes place in a psychiatric hospital for kids and young adults, so it's definitely has a kind of spookier feel to it. But yeah, it looks interesting. I mean, it's not super high on my list, but maybe kind of like you said with Birds of Prey, maybe I'll see how reviews are on this, and if it's, turns out to be better, then I think my expectations are that maybe it's something we go see.
Just from the trailers, which one would you want to see over the other?
Oh, New Mutants for sure. Yeah. No, I have zero interest in seeing Birds of Prey.
Yeah. So they're introducing some new characters, new to the film characters in this, but long-standing X-Men characters from the comics. I think you kind of have who's in this. So
yeah, Maisie Williams and Charlie Heaton are probably the 2 biggest names in here. So Maisie Williams was Arya Stark in Game of Thrones. Then Charlie Heaton plays Jonathan Byers in Stranger Things.
Yeah, so Maisie Williams, she's playing Wolfsbane, it's her mutant powers, but she can turn into a werewolf.
Oh, interesting.
So that's her mutant power.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Heaton plays Sam Guthrie. They don't have his, at least I'm looking on IMDb, they don't have his character name. I'm not too familiar with that one, but they're introducing Magic in this, who's played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who she's been in a couple things. She was kind of in the Split universe.
I'd say the name is not familiar at all to me, but
she was in like Split and Glass, those movies from M. Night Shyamalan.
Yep.
She plays Magic, who's been a character that she's more popular than not in the comics. So there's a couple things I think to look forward to in this movie. And something that we actually tweeted about earlier. So this movie, within the last 2 or 3 days, it's been a little confusing on whether it's going to be connected to the MCU or not. Because it's been over 2 years since the trailers dropped, they've gone through reshoots. At least I think I remember hearing that they went through reshoots. Someone from D23, which is the Disney Expo, said in a newsletter that this movie is going to be connected to the MCU, and the reshoots were done to introduce mutants into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but then less than 6 hours later, Disney deleted that newsletter. So it's kind of in debate on whether that's actually going to happen with this movie or not.
Okay.
But for me, I would think maybe it would, because after Disney bought out Fox, they canceled so many movies and projects from Fox, but they kept this one alive for some reason.
Okay.
So and with how badly Dark Phoenix did in theaters, I can't imagine they would...
That was the last X-Men movie.
Yeah, I can't imagine they would, be willing to keep another X-Men movie alive unless there was a purpose for it. So, I don't know. My conspiracy theory helmet is hoping that this is going to connect the X-Men to the MCU in some way. Or mutants, at least.
Yeah. So, put your tinfoil hat on and see if it turns out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So like I said, that one comes out in April. And that's all we got for the trailer park this week. A little bit quieter, and we just thought, hey, 2 comic book movies, let's put those together. Really wanted to focus some on the Golden Globes, then get into our predictions for Academy Award nominations later. So do we want to jump into the Golden Globe wrap-up?
Yeah, sure. What surprises or things did you like or dislike about the Golden Globes?
Yeah, so I mean, overall, I really enjoyed the show. I enjoyed a lot of the winners. I thought there were a lot of really fun moments. One thing just outside of the big winners in terms of like best film and best acting, I really loved seeing Kate McKinnon introducing Ellen DeGeneres as the winner of the Carol Burnett Award. Mm-hmm. It was so touching. It was really cool that they have such a personal connection. You think about like 3 generations of like great female comedians. It was really cool to see all 3 of them together. And I mean, Ellen's just, her timing is so hilarious. She kept making jokes like, oh, I'd love to thank my husband and my kids, and it's like, we get her humor and stuff. So that was super fun for me. The most exciting win for the night was definitely Awkwafina winning Best Actress for The Farewell. As people know, if they've listened to our episodes, The Farewell has been like the highest rated movie I've given so far. Just a really sweet film, and I loved Awkwafina in it. I've like fallen in love with her this year, so I was so excited to see her win. And she was, she had a great acceptance too, which was fun. Oh, it was so cute seeing Lulu Wang, who was the director of the movie, and then the woman that played Nai. They were both just sitting there, and they looked so happy seeing her win. So those were 2 fun moments. I have some others, but what sort of other like big moments did you like from the show?
I haven't seen it, but this is going to drive me to see the show now. I like that Rami Youssef won for the Best Actor for his show, Rami.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first award they gave out, I think. And he was hilarious, too. In his acceptance speech, he was kind of like, listen, I know you guys haven't seen my show.
Yeah,
I'm actually just an editor up here. They're like, what is this editor doing up here?
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, that was a kind of a fun way to start the show.
Yeah, and that's a show I've known about for a while. I listened to the Cinephile podcast by Adnan Verk, and he brings that show up a lot, that he loves that show. So I've known about it, but I've never made the effort to watch it. And one thing that's nice about award shows is they'll bring awareness to shows like that for winning. And so I think a lot of people are going to be checking that show out, and I might too. I thought it was weird that Missing Link won Best Animated Film over 3 Disney.
Yeah.
Like 3 Disney big movies like Toy Story 4.
Lion King.
That's not animated. That wasn't up for animated, was it?
Yeah, I thought it was.
Maybe it was. Maybe I'm going crazy. If it was, that's a huge one too. Okay, yeah, you're right. Lion King, Toy Story 4. I mean, pretty much the rest of the movies. The 3 Disney ones are Frozen 2 along with Lion King and Toy Story 4, and then How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah, it was
3.
the 3rd How to Train Your Dragon, which is like a hugely successful franchise.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that one was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, that was definitely a surprise, and I was looking into it a little bit, and I mean, it seems like the movie has fine ratings, but really didn't do well at the box office as well.
Yeah. But yeah, that one was a surprise.
Yeah.
I was happy Parasite won foreign language film. I'm
that
happy
was
whenever
great.
Parasite wins anything, I'm happy.
And I loved, so Bong Joon-ho was up on the stage, and he did a little bit of his acceptance in English, but he also had an interpreter up there for when he was speaking Korean. And like his closing thing was that he's like, your whole world opens up when you can get over the 1-inch barrier of subtitles. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge moment. And I know that some people have kind of had some like, why do we even have a foreign language? Like, can't we just like put all the movies together and just really like bring better acceptance into these foreign films and stuff? So I thought that was a cool, and he phrased it so well, just like this 1-inch barrier. And you're like, yeah, it's really not that big of a deal. And that's kind of what we have told people about that movie and some others that have been in foreign languages. It's like, subtitles, really not a big deal. Still a great story. Yeah,
no, absolutely. No surprise in the supporting roles. Pitt and Laura Dern winning. Pitt had a funny speech, though. He made a Titanic reference in his speech towards Leo.
Yeah.
Taron Egerton winning over Leo in Best Actor for Comedy Musical was a surprise, but kind of cool.
So fun. Elton John was another like highlight for me. He won Best Original Song with Bernie Taupin, and they were really fun to see their acceptance. And yeah, when Taron won for Best Actor, I mean, Elton looked like he was going to fall out of his chair. He was so excited. He was like fist bumping, dropped a few F-bombs, it looked like. So very cool. That was very exciting.
Speaking of F-bombs, did you like Ricky Gervais?
Yes, yeah, I did. I always think he's so funny, and he's, totally defended everything. I didn't think he did anything that was over the line, so.
No, it's just fine. If ISIS made a streaming service, you'd have all your agents calling them right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's, for the most part, all I had. I thought it was Joker won Best Original Score. And now that we've seen 1917, I don't know how that happened. I think 1917 score is so much better than Joker, but...
Yeah, but it was really cool because the composer who won for Joker, her name's Hildur Guðnadóttir. She's from Iceland, which is super cool. She's the first solo female to win the award. So, as much as I disliked that movie, really cool achievement for her, so...
Yeah, and then just close out, they announced that Tina Fey and Amy Poehler are going to be hosting next year's Golden Globes, and they've done that more than a couple times, too.
That's what I thought. I thought they had done it more than once before. So yeah, that kind of wraps up, like, my favorite moments. Probably the biggest surprise, at least in my eyes. So between Marriage Story and The Irishman, they had 11 nominations total. And like you mentioned, the only win they had was Laura Dern for Best Actress.
Yeah, The Irishman getting shut out was a surprise for me, especially since the Golden Globes are done by the
Hollywood Foreign Press Association.
They go for the big headline award. That's why a lot of people call the Golden Globes a joke, or they're not a great indicator for the Oscars, because they go for, like Bohemian Rhapsody won Best Picture last year. They go for the headlines, and usually when Martin Scorsese is involved with a film, they'll kind of lean his way. Like, I think he's won 3 Golden Globes for Best Director before, and for The Irishman to get completely shut out was a little surprising.
Yeah, to kind of recap the other big winners, like we mentioned, Awkwafina and Taron Egerton won for Best Actor and Actress in Musical and Comedy. Joaquin Phoenix and Renee Zellweger ended up winning on the dramatic side. And then 1917 ended up taking home Best Drama and Best Director. Sam Mendes got Best Director, which I was super excited about. Some people were saying that 1917 winning Best Drama was a little bit of a surprise. I kind of expected it. We hadn't even seen it yet, but I think a lot of people were thinking Irishman or Joker might win it. So 1917 took that home, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood ended up coming away with the most wins on the film side for the night.
All right, so yeah, that closes out the Golden Globes. We'll cut into our Richard Jewell review. Just the first part of the review is non-spoilers, and then we'll eventually get into the spoiler side of things. So just look for the time codes.
Okay, so we went and saw a number of movies over Christmas, and the first one we went and saw was Richard Jewell. So we mentioned this one when we reviewed the trailer a few weeks ago. This was directed by Clint Eastwood. The main stars in here, we've got Paul Walter Hauser, who plays the main character, Richard Jewell. I found out, we never saw this movie, but he also plays Tonya Harding's quote-unquote bodyguard in the movie I, Tonya. I honestly thought this was like the first thing he did, but he's been in I, Tonya. He's done some other stuff too. But was not someone that I had known from before. And then Sam Rockwell stars as Richard's friend / attorney, Watson Bryant. Kathy Bates plays Richard's mom, Bobby. Some supporting characters, we've got John Hamm, who plays FBI agent Tom Shaw. We found out later that Tom Shaw isn't like the real FBI agent who worked on this case. It's kind of like a composite stand-in character for just like FBI investigation in general. And then Olivia Wilde plays Atlanta newspaper reporter Kathy Scruggs. And Kathy was the real reporter for the paper, and she was the one who broke the story that the FBI was investigating Richard Jewell for the bombing at Centennial Park during the 1996 Olympics. So if you're unfamiliar with the story, there was a domestic terrorist bombing in Atlanta. I believe the date was July 27th, 1996. It took place at Centennial Park, which was, outside of, part of the Olympic complex for the Summer Olympics that took place in Atlanta in 96. And the bombing the blast killed one person. Another 111 people were injured. And then I read that another person died as part of the event. He did not die, directly from the blast, but suffered a heart attack during, the commotion. So, which, yeah, I didn't know much about this, so kind of looking into it, honestly, I was surprised that, I'm not surprised that anyone died because it's a bombing, but I just, not knowing much about it, I was kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, maybe, it wasn't that bad of a disaster, just because I had not heard about anyone dying from it. But anyway, 2 people did pass away during the event. And so the story in this movie is really about how Richard Jewell, he plays a security guard. He was a security guard at the events around the Olympics, and he's the one who spotted this suspicious unmanned backpack. And he calls over the police and other law enforcement personnel, hey, we should check this out. They get a bomb squad type person to come and open the bag and find out that, yeah, there were 3 pipe bombs in there. So he immediately goes to superhero status. He's on the Today Show the next morning talking about, yeah, I found it and just wanted to follow protocol and make sure people were safe. And very quickly thereafter, the FBI investigates him, saying, our most likely suspects kind of in a murder, the first person you go to is the spouse or the immediate family member. And so for this, it was, hey, this is the guy who found it. He's suspect number 1. So the movie kind of revolves around Richard dealing with this investigation.
What did you think of Richard Jewell, the movie?
I was say the movie or the person?
Yeah.
I think I went into this movie with mild expectations, and I came out really enjoying it. It was a really fascinating movie, and it kept me interested the whole time. There were moments that were so frustrating, but in terms of just how Richard handled things, but the Sam Rockwell playing his attorney Watson Bryant and Kathy Bates playing his mom Bobby, the 2 of them really just pushed the story along, and I every time they were on screen, it was just those were the best moments, I think.
Yeah, the 2 of them were my favorite parts of the movie. And that's not to say that Paul Walter Hauser did a bad job as Richard Jewell. I think he did a fantastic job as Richard Jewell. Yeah. I just think Richard Jewell as a character is frustrating, which, he's supposed to be, so he did a great job acting, but he was just frustrating and hard to connect with, and I was able to connect with Bobby and Watson more easier, so I liked the 2 of them more. But Paul Walter Hauser as Richard Jewell is fantastic. The little bit I've heard of clippings of the real Richard Jewell talking and acting, he nails it. He sounded and acted exactly like him. And I know I'd said it when we first watched the trailer that this will probably be Clint Eastwood's best movie in maybe a decade. It's probably true. This is probably his best movie since 2006 or 2008. Because I didn't love American Sniper. That seems to be the one a lot of people look at in that time frame, but I didn't love that movie, and this is probably one of the better movies Clint Eastwood's done in a while.
Yeah, one of the best parts about Sam Rockwell playing Watson Bryant is one of my favorite things is, as Richard is talking to these different people in the investigation, I would always just focus on whatever Watson was doing in the background, because he's always making a face or he's doing some sort of action oh, Richard, why are you handling it this way? So I think he did a really good job.
Yeah, so what score would you give Richard Jewell?
So I would give this one an 8.4. The movie was better than I expected. It wasn't, it didn't blow me away, but I think it was done just about as well as you could. If someone says, hey, should I put this on my list? I would say, yeah, go and see it.
Yeah. I gave it an 8.3, so I'm kind of in the same boat as you. There are a couple of things I think could have been done better, or a couple of things that probably didn't need to be in the movie. But overall, yeah, this was really well acted and very interesting because this guy's life was completely destroyed by the media. So you definitely get that feeling and definitely feel sorry for him throughout the movie, and you definitely want him to fight back and start fighting back, because I think that's one of the frustrating things about him is throughout this movie he's so, I appreciate the law and everything, that he isn't really fighting back too much. So, as a viewer, you definitely feel the frustrations and everything throughout the movie, which just goes to show that it was well made. So, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you at an 8.3. So, what Oscars, if any, do you think it may or should get?
I would really like to see, there's no surprise here, but I'd really like to see Sam Rockwell and Kathy Bates get nominated.
Yeah, and Kathy Bates did not get a SAG nomination, from what I hear, is because they accidentally, or for whatever reason, registered her as a leading actress instead of supporting. So hopefully for the Academy they do supporting, in which case I think she has a good shot of getting nominated.
Yeah.
Sam Rockwell, I think you said he did get nominated for a Golden Globe, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so, I mean, I'd have to take a look at it and see, who else is up for it, but I'm with you. I would love to see him get nominated because he did a fantastic job in this. We did see Vice, which was his last Oscar nomination, and that was one where I'm like, okay, maybe he didn't really need to get nominated for that. This is one where I think he should. So
yeah, I agree.
I would say Paul Walter Hauser, but that category is so loaded this year. There's 3 or 4 people that I think did a better job in films than him that may not even get nominated, so it's just too packed of a category this year for him to get a shot.
Yeah, leading actor is going to be really competitive this year, I think. So, yeah. So I think if you guys want to skip ahead at all, we're going to dive more into spoilers a little bit here. So, if you haven't seen it or you just want to skip this section, you can go ahead and look at the show notes and skip ahead. So I guess kind of going back to the beginning, I wanted to set up a little bit. So the movie starts, in the mid-'80s, I think? Late 80s? I'm trying to remember exactly.
I think it's 10 years before, so it's 86.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So it starts with the first time that Richard Jewell and Watson Bryant meet. So Richard's working as a supply clerk at the U.S. Small Business Administration, and Watson is there as an attorney. And, as Richard is kind of pushing his supply cart past Watson's desk, Watson's new there, and he's like, hey, I think you're low on, he's like, oh, you're low on tape, so I've got some Scotch tape for you. And oh, look in your lowest drawer, I got a bunch of Snicker bars in there for you. And he's like, whoa, Richard, how'd you know that? He's like, oh, well, I pay attention to what you have in your trash can. So it kind of shows, Richard is...
creepy.
A little bit creepy. But also, he's just he's really attentive. Really observant. And, Watson starts calling him Radar. And that's...
Nice MASH reference for all those people who are 40 and above to clap at during the movie.
So yeah, good MASH reference for you there. And they become friends and kind of stay in touch as they're there. And, it's after the bombing occurs and people find out, this security guard, Richard Jewell, is the one that spotted this bomb at the park. And, turns out, by him notifying the other law enforcement that's there and getting people away from where this bomb backpack is located, he probably saved a lot of lives. And so reporters are calling him in TV stations, and someone's like, hey, Richard, love to do a book deal. And so he's like, he calls up the only attorney that he knows and says, hey, Watson, this might be kind of weird, but if you remember me, here's what's going on, and someone has offered me a book deal, and just, hey, maybe you can help me with that. And he's like, yeah, sure, okay, sounds good. If you got something, send it over. So that's kind of how they get reconnected there. But, kind of setting up Richard's character, like we said, and he's very observant, attentive, a little bit creepy. He, has this steadfast dream being in law enforcement. He always wants to be police officer. They show him working as, campus police officer, and he's totally going, above and beyond his scope of duties. Not in a good way. He's harassing students in their dorms, and he's pulling people over on the street, and they're like, you don't have the authority to pull people over on the street. Your authority is only, within the school here. And so, you kind of see where his motivations are. And so the story really kind of gets going as, so John Hamm is there as an FBI agent, kind of, playing the role of security as well too, huge events, people from all across the world are coming to Atlanta. So he's on site, just, kind of watching out for suspicious people and whatever. And so when this event happens, he reports to the field office, and they kind of put together a profile on who this bomber might be. And, partly because of Richard's background, and he was the first one to find it, they've had, other bombings recently where people did it to garner attention. The, dean at the college that he was at calls and says, hey, this guy's a weirdo. You might want to look into him. That's when the investigation really starts going. And so then kind of how Olivia Wilde's character, Kathy Scruggs, gets in here is she knows Tom Shaw, that's the FBI agent, John Hamm's character. She knows Tom and tries to get the scoop from him about hey, who's your guy? Who are you guys investigating? Blah, blah, blah. And he tells her, hey, we are looking at the security guard. And she's like, whoa, this is going to be a huge break, because for the last 24 hours, this guy's been American hero, and now he's suspect number one. That totally flips the script. And so from there, it's really the FBI and the media really looking into Richard, and if he could have been the one that did it. So after the newspapers break this story, and Richard's not even aware that he's a suspect, and the FBI agents come to his home. So he lives in an apartment with his mom, and the FBI comes and says, hey, we want to put together this training video for how to detect bombs and bomb protocol for other security. You did such a great job. And so they gave it to him this thing under this guise of, hey, we're doing this training video. And they get there and start recording all this stuff with him. Hey, Richard, here's this form. It's your Miranda rights. Why don't you, sign it and, kind of waive your rights. And he pretends to sign it. And they're like, no, why don't you sign it for actual authenticity? And this is where I'm okay, this guy's a little slow. I hope he understands what's going on here. And thankfully, because he does know so much about law enforcement, he's hey, I am not signing this. And they're like, yeah, no, just do it. Go ahead and do it. He's I'm going to talk to my attorney. And so this is when he calls Sam Rockwell's character, Watson, again. He's yeah, I think I'm being questioned by the FBI. And that's where he's don't say anything. Don't do anything.
Yeah, which I liked, because, I just, in general, never like it when law enforcement or whoever it is, the FBI, the police, or whoever it is, I never like it when they are lying to get their way with things. We watched the Central Park 5 docudrama and the
Making a Murder.
Making a Murder, where you see these instances of the police basically lying to get them to say whatever they want them to say.
In the U.S., it's perfectly legal for law enforcement to lie to suspects while questioning them. So that was one of the more, frustrating, just because they were trying to do that. But scenes that I liked in the movie where I'm like, come on, Richard, you got to realize, don't sign that, please. And thankfully he did, like you said, he calls his attorney, who shows up and does the stereotypical, but
thing that I love with lawyers where they just tell the police to fuck off and leave them alone. Like, it's kind of satisfying to hear him say that, but it's, that's something that a lot of lawyers do in movies. But I definitely liked that scene a lot. Going back to how Kathy Scruggs found out about the Richard Jewell as a suspect, that's a hot topic of controversy at the moment. What did you think of that scene?
Yeah, and then this definitely dropped the movie a few points for me. So, like I said, Kathy Scruggs is a real person. She's since passed away, but she was the one who broke the story. And in the movie, they show her trading sex for the story, which everyone who knows her, who's spoken up, has said, like, category, that's untrue. Like, she never would have done that. Like, she was a very lively, flirtatious, kind of in-your-face type reporter, but, they said that she never would have done that. And I was really disappointed that Olivia Wilde would take a role in that route. Like, supposedly no one, reached out to Kathy's family and worked with them on the story, and I've always thought Olivia Wilde was better than that, but it's something that I think is unfortunate. One, it's like an easy cop-out, like, oh, let's just use this lady, and yeah, she'll trade sex for stories, and she's not alive, so there's no one that can say, yeah, she did or didn't do it. But yeah, it was disappointing for me, for sure.
Yeah, it was just stupid. I don't know why they had to include that in the movie. It could have been... Here, how would you have felt if it would have gone down like this? So in the scene, she's flirting with John Hamm's character, Shaw, in the bar, and she actually gets him to say who they're looking at before they actually have sex. So what if it would have been she flirted with him, got the name, and then been like, you actually think I would have slept with you for that, and then left? How'd you have felt if that would have happened?
Yeah, that would have been better.
At least better, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it just, like, they didn't have to actually have sex. You could have done this any other way. You didn't have to have sex involved at all. Yeah, that, I've heard people...
It totally takes away her credibility.
But yeah, good point, because for me, I mean, this is a movie Clint Eastwood is making about how the media's interpretation of someone can ruin their lives, and then he went and made this thing up about Kathy Scruggs. Like, yep. What are you doing? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't get it. It was just dumb. Like, you'd think we could get past that part where people have to, like, sell their bodies for information like this. Yeah. Like, it's just totally, I don't know, I hated that part of the movie. And I've heard some people say that they hate that part, but they're not going to use it for their rankings of movies, and I do, because it is part of the movie. It's something that they put in the movie. It's part of it. I did lower it a couple spots as well, just because for that scene alone. But yeah, I mean, going into, throughout the movie, I will say, aside from that scene, her character does have a better arc than others, where she realizes her mistake and then does come to regret it. I think a real life thing is, like, she's regretted doing that story the rest of her life. So by the end of the movie, she does feel sorry for it, which is good, because that's more than I can say for John Hamm's character, which, although made up, I'm sure is how some people feel about it for some weird reason. That even by the last scene of the movie, when that he gets exonerated, Richard Jewell gets exonerated, and Shaw is the one to deliver the letter to them, he still says, I still think you're guilty. Even though they caught I think they knew at that point who the real guy was, it just took them 6 years to capture him.
Okay. I mean, the movie didn't inform us of that at all, but yeah, you might be right. Yeah,
I think in real life they found out who really did it, but they were in hiding for 6 years, and it took them 6 years to track down.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, all in all, it was a really good movie. My favorite scenes were whenever Rockwell and Paul Walter Hauser were together, because I just think it was interesting that Watson was defending a guy that he knew was innocent, but then he's this kind of flawed guy where he's putting up all these red flags that would make him seem like he's guilty. Like, one of my favorite scenes is when he's like, do you own any guns? And he's like, yeah, a few. Like, when Watson is asking Richard Jewell that. And then he goes, okay, well, lay them all out on your bed. We don't want any surprises. And he goes in his room, and it's basically, it's like an arsenal.
Covers his whole bed.
Yeah, and Watson's like, are you kidding me? Of course you own all these freaking guns. Like, it's just, he's doing things that make it harder and harder for him to defend him, but he's doing it knowing that he's innocent.
Right. So like,
that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, he has a number of, like, you know, innocuous things, like, on their own wouldn't necessarily be a red flag, but because they're investigating him for this bombing, like, and because Richard knows so much about this stuff, like, FBI is going through all the stuff at his and his mom's apartment, and he picks up a book that's titled, like, How O.J. Simpson Got Away with Murder.
Yeah.
And Watson's just kind of like, why do you have this book? Like, don't, he's like, oh, that was a great read. And you're just like, no, shut up. Like, don't say anything.
Like, that was another scene, like the gun thing, exactly, where it's like, it's just another thing that puts up a red flag, and he's just defending him, or, you know, he tells him, Watson tells Richard when the FBI comes in to take all the evidence that they want, he tells them, don't say anything.
And they go over it multiple times. He's like, Richard, what are you going to do? He's like, not say anything. He's like, what am I going to do? He's like, you're going to do all the talking. I'm not going to say anything.
And then it's just, he talks the whole time. He volunteers himself to help pack things, or he just volunteers information that he doesn't need to say.
Yeah, like they're packing up the Tupperware, and Mom's like, what do you need with my Tupperware? And Richard's like, oh, well, you know, a lot of times you can mix gunpowder and explosives and Tupperware, and that's how this person did it. And you're just like, shut up. Like,
shut the fuck up.
You are incriminating yourself, even though you did nothing. And so it's like, it's this super, one thing I picked up, like, it's this weird juxtaposition of, like, Richard, like, and the FBI, like, they're both trying to go, like, by protocol. Like, the reason why Richard even found this bag and said anything, like, he's like, hey, I don't want to be, he's like, I'd rather be called crazy than right and have all these people, like, die. And they're like, okay, fine, like, we'll go through the steps, Richard, just in case this is something wrong.
Yeah, that was good early in the movie when, everyone's like, there's just beer in this backpack. And he's like, no, protocol, by the book. And he gets them to do it, which saved lives. So, yeah, you're right. That was good.
You know, and on the flip side, FBI is like, protocol, we got to pack up all this shit. And Richard just keeps saying, oh, yeah, that's why you need to do this. And this is why you need to do this. And his mom's like, why are you defending them? He's like, I'm not defending them. They're doing their jobs. Mm-hmm. And so it's weird how both sides are doing their jobs but they're so, like, opposed to each other at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Because I was definitely more, because you're right, like, at the beginning of the movie, it's like, yeah, do it by the book, because that's what ended up saving lives. But I was definitely more so on the side of stop cooperating with them. Like, they're after you. Don't help them.
Yeah, you know, Watson says,
I know you're innocent, so there's technically nothing to hide, but, like, in our system, like, you could be innocent and they could still find a way to pin this on you, I'm sure.
And he's like, this is a federal crime. This is the death penalty we're talking about here. And so, you know, all these frustrating moments, like, you're waiting for Richard to finally just, like, step up for himself and just finally be like, you know, through the whole movie, he's like, yeah, you to me, cop to cop, we're both law enforcement. He got, like, I'm one of you. We're together in this. And you just want to be like, dude, no, this is not the same. Like, you need a change of pace here. And so I think the scene where he does finally say, like, you know, do you guys even, like, have anything on me? Because if you don't, then I'm walking out this door. Because I always thought that law enforcement is about serving and protecting and justice. And he's like, this is none of it. And I think that scene really paid off because it's just like he was on their side. And finally he's like, no, this is bullshit.
Yeah, no, that was because, yeah, you're right. Eventually he does finally stand up for himself because through most of this movie he doesn't. He's just kind of helping them out in a weird way. But I think that's what was frustrating for me with Richard's character throughout the whole movie. He, you know, for a leading character, you want someone that's likable and you can relate to, and throughout most of this movie he is frustrating and cooperative with not the people you want him to be cooperative with. But then finally by the end he does eventually decide to take a stand for himself, and he has a great, I don't want to say speech, but kind of, reaction to the FBI, or that statement to the FBI at the end of the movie that was really good. So by the end he definitely finally takes a stand, and it pays off in a big way. For me, I thought this movie was pretty much as good as I thought it would be. I've got a couple things that I was hoping, I was hoping to see more stuff on the FBI side of things, like why they were so hell-bent on him being the guy, other than just the profile, because you'd think them being the FBI, they'd be a little more thorough on it. And I don't know any real-life stuff behind it. Maybe you did more research on it than I did, but one thing that I was hoping for is, so we saw during the explosion that the type of bomb it was it had nails in it or something along those lines, because they showed him hit the ground. And then when the FBI or whoever sends a neighbor into Richard Jewell's house with a bug or a mic on to record conversations, Richard says at one point, or maybe it was a bomb that had nails and whatever chemical in it, which seemed to be what the real life bomb was. Mm-hmm. I wish we would have gotten more of that end, like the FBI going, because that was the last we'd heard of it, that Richard brought that up. Yeah. I wish we would have had more analysis of, here's evidence that we think Richard really did it, because he said this. He said the type of bomb it was. Or both Kathy Scruggs and Watson Bryant walk the distance from where Richard was working to where the pay phone where the bomber called it in.
Yeah, that's right. We never talked about the bomber did call 911 from a pay phone near the park, saying there's a bomb in Centennial Park, you have 30 minutes.
Yeah, and while they make Richard record those lines, they have him say those lines over and over again. They don't show any analysis of it, like how close his voice is to that voice, or a reporter and the lawyer were able to just easily walk the distance and realize that Richard was innocent. And the FBI does say, we know that he must have had a second accomplice. But I was hoping to have more analysis on that end of things. That is some of the more interesting parts to these stories to me, is why the FBI thinks he did it. Show me the evidence, the things that...
Besides just the profile, basically. Yeah, this is the type of person that would do it.
Which they even say in the movie, that's just a starting point. Well, I want to see the stuff that brings you to your end conclusion, because that's more interesting to me. The stuff that Watson Bryant has to defend against, or prove wrong, or things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So
I agree that I think that part would be more interesting, but I think the title of the film is Richard Jewell. The perspective is all about focusing on Richard and what he went through, and so I think kind of how the FBI got there was secondary.
Yeah, all right, that's fair.
I'm not saying that makes it better or worse, but I think that was just the perspective that Eastwood wanted to present.
Okay.
So, anyway, any other closing thoughts?
No, not really any closing thoughts. I would definitely say it's worth a watch, though.
Yeah, I agree. So that wraps us up for Richard Jewell. Okay, let's hop into this week's Best Picture winner, which comes from the year 1967, and that is In the Heat of the Night. This film is based on a novel by John Ball. I wasn't aware that it was based on a novel, but it is. It was adapted into a screenplay by Sterling Silliphant, and it was directed by Norman Jewison. So the film takes place in Sparta, Mississippi. A prominent businessman is murdered. And if I kind of run through some of the main characters here, we've got Sidney Poitier, who stars as Detective Virgil Tibbs. That's, the famous line, "They call me Mr. Tibbs," that comes from this movie. He is a homicide detective from Philadelphia, and he happens to be in Mississippi just passing through kind of when this murder takes place. You might also know him from, he starred in Lilies of the Field, which is where he won his Best Actor Academy Award. He's also been in The Defiant Ones
Oscar nomination for that one.
and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Those might be some of the other films from around like the 60s that he starred in. We also have Roger Steiger, who plays the local police chief in Mississippi, and he plays Bill Gillespie. Roger Steiger has been in a number of things, probably most notably on The Waterfront.
Oscar nomination for that one.
Yeah. We also have Warren Oates, who plays Sam Wood. Sam Wood is a fellow police officer on duty, and I think he's the one who ended up discovering the body. One other notable actor, Scott Wilson, is this. He plays Harvey Oberst is his character name. He's been in a number of things, but probably the most popular recent thing he's been in is he plays Herschel in the TV show The Walking Dead. This film had 7 Oscar nominations. It took home 5 wins, including Best Picture, leading actor for Rod Steiger, his portrayal as the police chief. They also won Adapted Screenplay, which I mentioned went to Sterling Silliphant. They also won for Sound and Film Editing. The 2 nominations they had but did not win were Best Director for Norman Jewison and then also Sound Effects.
This is one of my top, I don't know off the top of my head, but this is one of my top 10 or 15 favorite best pictures of all time. I remember watching this middle school, high school, just absolutely loving it and thinking the two leads in general, and Rod Steiger as Bill Gillespie and Sidney Poitier as Virgil Tibbs. I mean, they're the two that carry the movie. There's, like you said, other characters in the movie, but they're the two that you're following most of the time. So their chemistry and their acting skills in this movie really shine and make the movie as good as it is. But yeah, it's a movie.
Do you want to walk us through kind of the storyline?
Yeah, just to start out, the basic premise of this movie is, it's a small town in Mississippi. I think it's supposed to just take place during the years it was shot, so in the mid-'60s.
Racial tensions are high.
Yeah, so it's a murder mystery, but with all these racial tensions wrapped around it because it does take place in the South. And, Virgil Tibbs, obviously being a black man, is helping out with this case. The movie starts out with Sam Wood. It's like the middle of the night. He's at this all open 24/7 hour restaurant who's run by Ralph, a character named Ralph, who that actor has actually he's only been in a handful of movies, but 2 of them are Best Picture winners, in this and Unforgiven.
And what's his name?
His character name is Ralph.
Yeah, what's the actor's name?
Anthony James is the real life actor's name. So Sam Wood is in his diner or all night open restaurant or whatever, and
Sam's one of the police officers, like you mentioned, right?
Yep. And Sam goes on his nightly routine, he gets in his cop car, goes on his nightly routine or route, which includes him being a little bit of a peeping Tom. He watches a white woman undress, and I think she knows. I don't know. It's kind of weird. So he sees that and moves on. He finds the body of Philip Colbert, who's a guy that came down from Chicago to Sparta, Mississippi to build a factory plant, which would help out the city's employment, and it would really boost the economy of this small town. So everyone's been really happy that he's there. So it's a really big issue if he's been found dead, with his wallet missing. So Bill Gillespie tells everyone to go try to figure out who did it. Sam Woods is the one who goes to the train station and finds Virgil Tibbs sitting there. So here in the South, you see this black man sitting at a train station. Well, he grabs him and brings him in for questioning without even talking to him, without asking Virgil any questions or anything like that. So they bring him in, and Virgil and Bill talk alone for a little while, and that's when Virgil tells him that he's a cop. He shows him his badge, and
he's like a prominent homicide detective in Philadelphia.
So that's when he reveals that he is a cop from Philadelphia. He's one of their best homicide detectives. So then Bill asks him to stay and help out with the case, and he doesn't really want to, but then his police chief back in Philly orders him to stay and help. So now he's caught in a situation that he doesn't really want to be in, but he can help out. And so that's when he starts helping out the investigation, and there's some cool scenes. Like, he examines the body and he starts listing off all these things he needs, like, I'm gonna need tweezers, a thermometer, I need this, and everyone's just standing around like, what is going on? Who is this guy? And he actually kind of shows up some of these guys, which is always fun. Like the local doctor claimed that the body has been dead for only a couple hours. And Virgil's like, no, because of this, and this, when you say that the time of death is a lot sooner. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. So instantly...
So, yeah, he's got a little more sophistication and maybe some more experience than some of these guys in the smaller town, it seems like.
Yeah, which makes sense, right? If you're in a small town in Mississippi or anywhere, anywhere where you're not dealing with murders on a regular basis, I like that part of the movie where it kind of shows his skills coming through and how much of a help he can be. Also, while examining the body, he realizes and says that the body must have been killed somewhere else and moved because I think it was dirt, and he needed the tweezers to examine things under his fingernails, which, because of what was there, would tell him that the body was killed somewhere else and moved to where they found it. And then right after that is when Herschel from The Walking Dead, or Harvey is his character name in this, becomes a suspect. And there's a pretty big chase scene, and Bill Gillespie arrests him, and the reason he's a suspect is because... Ooh, excuse me.
You purple at mid-sentence.
Yeah. Is because he has the wallet of Philip Colbert on him, and he stole it. He claims that he came along and just saw the body there, thought it was a passed-out drunk guy, and takes the wallet from him. But Gillespie is not convinced. He thinks he's the murderer. He wants to get this case closed down as soon as possible. So he arrests him, puts him in jail, but Virgil isn't convinced. He doesn't think he's a murderer. I think it's because Harvey's left-handed, and all the bruises and wounds on on Philip Colbert's body would say that a right-handed person was the one who killed him. So he's not convinced. And Colbert's wife, who's now involved a little bit, hasn't been happy with Gillespie or the local police, and she hears Virgil talking about all this with the left hand, and I think Virgil even says at one point, I don't know, maybe he came across the body afterwards and took the wallet, and Colbert's wife is like, that's what he said. So she's impressed by Tibbs and says that she's going to take the construction of the factory elsewhere if he isn't made the lead on the case.
Yeah.
Which kind of forces him and Gillespie to bond a little bit more. And while they are angry at each other a lot in this movie, you do see the two of them start to build a respect for each other, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So after he's made the lead on the investigation, he wants to go see Endicott, who is the local plantation owner.
Okay.
And he wants to see him because, one, he's basically the most powerful man in the city, but two, he has the most to lose if a factory is built in town because he's going to lose a lot of his employees and labor and workforce and control over the city.
Yeah.
So they go out to Endicott's plantation to question him, and surprise, surprise, Endicott is a huge racist who immediately starts making comments about Virgil, and when Tibbs starts interrogating him more and more, Endicott slaps Virgil, and then without even thinking about it, Virgil turns around and slaps Endicott back. And Endicott at that point even looks at Gillespie, who watches all this happen, and says, "You going to do anything about it?" And Gillespie really doesn't, which goes to show his character has been changing throughout this movie.
Yeah. He's more open to working with Tibbs and kind of his... how he's doing things. Yeah, I mean, whether he realizes it or not, because I think even Sam Woods comes up to Gillespie at one point, and he goes, like, what's going on with you? And he's like, what are you talking about? He goes, like, you would have shot Virgil, like, 2 weeks ago, if anyone would have slapped Endicott that way, you would have shot him dead and not even thinking about it. And he's like, what's going on? So it's even, Gillespie isn't even realizing that he's changing, but he is. Yeah. And then I think after that point, so then Tibbs asks Sam to retrace his steps with him. He basically gets in his car and goes, okay, take us where you went that night. We want to retrace your steps. So he takes him to Ralph's Diner, or restaurant. Ralph also racist in this movie. A lot of the guys are, naturally.
And then, so he takes him on his route, but then conveniently skips the whole peeping Tom part. He doesn't take him to that woman's house. And Virgil catches him in that lie. He's kind of like, why didn't you stop at this person's place? And so he catches him in a lie. Gillespie starts becoming suspicious of Sam even at that point, and finds out that he had, the day after the murder, had deposited a large amount of money in his bank account, which was a similar amount to what's been missing from Colbert's wallet. So he basically arrests Sam too at that point. While Virgil kind of caught him in a lie, he doesn't think he's actually the murderer. And then that's when another character by the name of Purdy, so it's a new character at this point. He's another white man, a local who lives in the town. He has a sister who's 16 years old, and he brings her into the police station, saying that Sam got her pregnant. That's what she told him. She's pregnant, and she said, Sam got me pregnant. And so he wants Sam to be, reprimanded for this, and they question Dolores, that's his sister, about what happened. And she describes what happened. She's saying it was Sam who did it, but it doesn't really sound like anything Sam would do. So Virgil and Gillespie are kind of suspicious of that. And that's when Virgil goes to Harvey, who's still in the jail cell, and asks him, where would I go if I needed to get an abortion? And he tells him where and who to see. So Virgil goes to that person, so it's a back alley type abortionist, starts questioning this person, and the abortionist, she admits that she has an appointment to do an abortion on Dolores, who then shows up at her shop. So then Virgil follows her, and she runs to her boyfriend, who is revealed to be Ralph, the owner of the restaurant.
Okay.
And he is the actual murderer. So she was lying that Sam was the one that got her pregnant. It was really Ralph. He just didn't want her to use his name. So he's revealed to be the actual killer and murderer. And then Purdy, Dolores' brother, shows up, and Virgil tells him to look in her purse. She has this money for an abortion. It's really Ralph who's the father. So then the two of them, Purdy and Ralph, get in a fight, and Ralph ends up killing Purdy, Dolores' brother. So they arrest him. They have him in the police station. He confesses to everything. He says that, he went to the construction site with Endicott, and he hit him over the head with a 2x4, and he just wanted to rob him. To
take his money so he could help this girl get an abortion.
So he took the money, left the wallet. So that's why, or not all the money, but it's a certain amount of money was missing. So he took enough money for the abortion and left the wallet, dragged the body to wherever it was found. And that's when Harvey, comes across the body, takes the wallet, and is off and running. He even, Ralph even has a line like, "That's all, I didn't mean to kill him." And then the movie ends with Tibbs getting on a train back to Philly, and Gillespie's the one dropping him off, and then Ray Charles' In the Heat of the Night song starts playing, and that's the end of the movie.
Beautiful. That was a great recap. Good synopsis of...
Did I do good?
Yeah, you did good.
I did good. Okay.
You did well.
I did well. My bad.
I don't know. Yeah, I think you hit on all the big points. It's a really fascinating movie because it's a great crime story. Like you said, you start off just trying to figure out, okay, why is this person from a different town murdered, and you find a few different characters who could have possible motive and possible suspects, and you kind of see these other players kind of fall into it. So it's just like, to begin with, a really great crime story, and it was really fun seeing Virgil kind of go through his motions and, okay, like, yeah, these are the tools I need, and let me take a look at the body and kind of go through the autopsy. And, I think he had some more sophisticated ways of looking at things, especially for a small town. And I think some of this stuff we see more and more often in crime shows and stuff like CSI, but I think for something like this to be kind of discussed in the 60s was probably
It's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. So really liked the crime solving aspect of it. And like I said, there's a lot of social issues that you bring into it and kind of how the racial tensions play into this. And, talking about abortions and stuff, that's still controversial now, but especially then. So I think they did a really good job of tying all those pieces together and giving each piece its own time. Like one aspect didn't overpower the other and something else didn't feel like an afterthought. I thought it was tied together really well. So yeah, with that, I feel like maybe this is a little bit of a low score. I gave it an 8.3 out of 10. And honestly, I think part of that is just because it's been a while since we've seen this, and I feel like maybe if I saw it again, I might have kind of a different take on it. But like I said, it was an enjoyable movie. It didn't blow me away, but I would say definitely worth the watch.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I love the performances. They're really strong, especially in the two leads. Rod Steiger won an Oscar for his role. I also like Tibbs kind of showing his deductive reasoning skills for a lot of things. I like that it shows both Gillespie and Tibbs kind of get caught in their own ways. Gillespie, for obvious reasons, he's a white cop in the South, so he has natural, racist overtones throughout parts of the movie, even though he does grow out of some of them. But even Virgil kind of gets caught in his own way, too. He gets stuck on, he wants Endicott to be the bad guy.
Sure, yeah.
Because he's this white racist plantation owner in the South. They even say it at one point, Gillespie looks at him and says something along the lines like, oh, geez, you're just like the rest of us. Because I think at that point, the evidence was pointing to someone other than Endicott, but Virgil just really wanted to have him be the bad guy. So even he kind of got caught in his own way at some point. And obviously the growth of Gillespie's character is, you always want to see that in a lead, right? I mean, if they start out as a bad, not so good, racist, you want them to grow out of that, which he does to an extent. Similar to, Sam Rockwell's character in 3 Billboards, he kind of has the same kind of arc where he starts out at one extreme and then kind of moves over to the other side a little bit.
Yeah, kind of changes his tune.
Or there are some things that I think could have been better. This is an obvious one. I think it's a super convenient thing to have that while this murder happened in this small town Mississippi, there happens to be this world-renowned detective from Philly at your train station at the same time, and they happen to bring him in, and he's willing to help. It's just something that happens. It doesn't really bother me. I can get past that pretty easily, but that's a really convenient thing that happens in this movie.
Sure, yeah.
And then for me, for Ralph to be the killer, to me that was kind of an unsatisfying way to do it. It wasn't one of those cases where they were leaving clues throughout the movie to show that Ralph was the eventual killer. They could have plugged in anyone in that spot, and they could have been the killer. It wasn't super satisfying to have Ralph be the killer because they were laying out all these clues, and it was an accident too. He didn't even mean to kill him. Yeah, there's not as much weight behind the killing to me, but that's not what this movie is necessarily about. Yeah, it's about the racial tensions and relationships, and the murder is part of the plot, but not the main part of it. So that's another reason I can kind of get past it. But that is something I remember watching it the first time, thinking that too. Like, oh, that's who the killer is. It's a little. I wish they could have done a little bit more with that. But
So, what score would you give this?
Right now I have this as a 9.4.
Okay.
So I do really like it.
Yeah.
There were just some things that I thought could have been better about it.
Yeah, kind of knocked the point down a little bit. That wraps it up for me. Is there anything else you wanted to add on this before we move into some of the other winners from that year?
No, that's all I've got, so we can roll into the other big nominees and winners for 1967. So I'm not gonna change anything here. It's not like a redoing of or anything. But this is kind of funny, though. For 1967, I've actually seen a lot of these movies For Best Picture, I'll get to them, but I think I've seen all of them that were nominated that year. So,
some big name movies come out that year?
There are a couple.
Cool.
There's some that I just happen to have seen, but yeah, there's some big name ones here.
Awesome.
Best Supporting Actress was won by Estelle Parsons for Bonnie and Clyde. Other nominees were Carol Channing for Thoroughly Modern Millie.
Oh, nice. I don't think I ever knew she was in that.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Nope, I didn't either. Mildred Natwick for Barefoot in the Park. Bo Richards for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And Catherine Ross for The Graduate. She played Mrs. Robinson.
Ah, okay.
Or no, she didn't play Ms. Robinson. She played Ms. Robinson's daughter.
Gotcha. Yep.
Best Supporting Actor was won by George Kennedy and one of my personal favorites of all time, Cool Hand Luke. John...
So yeah, there are some big movies that came out that year. Nice, yep. Okay.
John Cassavetes was nominated for The Dirty Dozen.
Another big movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're
thinking about classics.
Yeah, they're
67.
Yeah,
lots
the
of classics.
Classic year. Gene Hackman was nominated for Bonnie and Clyde. Cecil Calloway was nominated for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And Michael J. Pollard was nominated for Bonnie and Clyde. So Bonnie and Clyde had 2 nominees for Best Supporting Actor that year.
So Sidney Poitier was in the Heat of the Night this year, and then also Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yeah, so
I think I must have missed that when I was looking up some of his other filmography. I didn't realize they came out the same year.
He had a big year, 1967. Best Actress was won by Katharine Hepburn for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. She has a big scene in that because that was Spencer Tracy's last movie before he died, and he has a big speech at it, and she cries during it. Apparently that was just her crying because while she was married to someone else, her and Spencer Tracy had a close relationship for a number of years.
What's that movie about? Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Have you seen it?
Yeah, that's the one it is. So Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn are husband and wife. Their daughter brings home Sidney Poitier as her fiance, whom they've never met, and it's another racial tension type movie where they're not accepting of him, and then their minds kind of get changed by the end of it.
Fascinating.
Anne Bancroft was nominated for The Graduate. That is her as Mrs. Robinson. Faye Dunaway was nominated for Bonnie and Clyde. Edith Evans was nominated for The Whisperers. Audrey Hepburn was nominated for Wait Until Dark. So
Audrey and Catherine in the same category.
Same year. Yep. So those were the Best Actress nominees.
Bonnie and Clyde has had a nomination in each acting category so far.
Yeah. Oh, and spoiler alert, they're about to get another one. So Rod Steiger won for In the Heat of the Night. Warren Beatty nominated for Bonnie and Clyde. Dustin Hoffman nominated for The Graduate. This was his first nomination, I believe. And it was for a classic in The Graduate.
Yeah.
Paul Newman nominated for Cool Hand Luke. And then Spencer Tracy, this was a posthumous nomination because, again, he passed away shortly after this movie. He was nominated for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
That is a huge list.
I mean, every single one of these they won at least one Oscar. I mean, Rod Steiger, this is his Oscar win. He'd been nominated 2 previous times. I know On the Waterfront was his first one. I can't remember his second one. Warren Beatty, I mean, he's all-time classic. He didn't win his Oscar in acting. He would eventually win it for Best Director, which we talked about back in our 1981 episode for Reds. Dustin Hoffman, I mean, one of the best all time.
But in so many Oscar-nominated films.
And he's won twice for Kramer vs. Kramer and Rain Man. Paul Newman, he went for the longest time without getting a win, but eventually got it in '86 for the sequel to The Hustler, Color of Money, Martin Scorsese movie. And then Spencer Tracy, he won. He was the first person to win back-to-back Best Actors. I think he was the first. Yeah, he was, because Tom Hanks is the only other person to do it. Wow. So I mean, this is stud category right here. Rod Steiger came away with the W.
And unfortunately, celebrating the 50-year anniversary of Bonnie and Clyde gives us one of the biggest Oscar ceremony moments ever.
Oh, yeah.
When Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway announced the wrong winner for Best Picture.
Yep, that was when they said La La Land, but Moonlight won Best Picture, as Ann Nanberg would say.
Guys, we didn't win, by the way. Moonlight, you guys won
Best Picture. Yeah, that was a moment.
Yeah. Anyway.
Best Director won by Mike Nichols for The Graduate. Other nominees: Arthur Penn for Bonnie and Clyde, Stanley Kramer, all-time classic for him. He's won multiple awards for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Richard Brooks for In Cold Blood. And then Norman Jewison was nominated for In the Heat of the Night. And then Best Picture. So I've seen all of these. The winner, In the Heat of the Night. And then Bonnie and Clyde. Dr. Dolittle, the old one I used to watch that all the time as a kid with Rex Harrison. And then The Graduate. And Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I mean, I know I said I wasn't going to change anything. But if I were going to, I would take out Dr. Dolittle and put in Cool Hand Luke. Because I just love that movie. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Dolittle, it's an okay movie, but I think that was more so nominated because it's like a grand spectacle kind of movie. They had all these giant creatures, practical effects, like a giant snail and all. It was a large scale movie. I think they just nominated for that. But yeah, those are the winners and nominees for 1967. Kind of a big year.
Yeah, big year. Like, some of these older films we go back, and I haven't heard about many of these other movies or other actors, actresses, but these are some huge names, some huge films. So 1967 turned out to be a pretty good year in film.
Yep. So yeah. And speaking of the Academy Awards, let's go on to who we think will be nominated for these upcoming Academy Awards, which will be announced on Monday the 13th.
Yeah, Monday morning.
So we decided to do the eight bigger categories. So Best Picture, Director, Actor, Actress, Supporting Actress, and the 2 writing categories. So we'll start with writing.
Yeah.
And then I'll go through what I have, and then you'll say if you got anything different or what your different opinions will be.
Yep, that works.
So we'll start with writing, adapted screenplay.
Uh-huh.
So I think there are 3 locks in this category.
What do you think those will be?
I think it's The Irishman, Steve Zalian, Jojo Rabbit, Taika, and Little Women, Greta. And the other 2 that I have this is kind of what I hope and think will get nominated, is The Two Popes by Anthony McCartan and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
Nice, okay.
So those are my 5.
Yeah, I totally agree with the top 3. Like, I think Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Little Women, those will for sure be in. I think Two Popes will get it as well, and then I think Joker is going to get in there.
Fuck that. We had this debate. I don't think it's an adapted... I'm pounding on the table, so I don't think it's an adapted screenplay. I get why it is, because it's based on DC characters, but Arthur Fleck has never been a Joker character. The Joker in this movie, I don't think is really a Joker. They remade Taxi Driver and just said, let's make him Joker.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like if they didn't have Bruce Wayne in there...
And you could have taken him out of this frickin' movie. They may have
gotten away with an original screenplay. I don't know. But this movie is getting so much love from all of the different award ceremonies that I feel like it's going to get in. I
agree.
I don't want it to.
I don't want it to either.
Could.
You're probably right. It probably will get nominated. And looking at maybe over one of the last 2 I said, it'll probably get in there. And we'll get to Best Actor. While I think Joaquin is great in this movie, I don't give it love for all the other categories or anything else that it's getting.
No. We haven't touched on this at all, but the BAFTA, so the British Academy Film Awards nominations came out last week, I believe, and Joker had the most nominations with 11, and I was dumbfounded. I don't see how that movie can have that.
I will say, I think it's a joke if it gets a Best Picture and Writing nomination. I think it will, but I would call it a joke if it does. No pun intended.
Yeah, right.
Because the writing, it's basically 2 old Martin Scorsese movies put into one in Taxi Driver and King of Comedy.
Yeah.
Writing, there's nothing special about this movie.
Yeah, I would say that the dialogue isn't anything special.
It's the acting. Joaquin's performance is the only reason this movie is good or great.
Yep.
That is it.
Do you have a predicted winner for the adapted screenplay?
I was gonna say I basically the first one I list in all these will be who I think will win.
Okay.
But once the nominations actually come out, I'm sure we'll do a show on like who we think will win down the road. But like if you're the first name I list is kind of who I think will win out of these.
Cool.
Writing again, but original screenplay. I've got Marriage Story, Noah Baumbach, Knives Out, Ryan Johnson, Parasite, Bong Joon-ho, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, QT. Those are the 4 locks that I have in my opinion, and then the 5th one I have is Booksmart.
Yeah, and I've got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Marriage Story, and Parasite as the locks. I'm kind of Knives Out, 1917, Booksmart. Any of those might take the last 2 spots. I think screenplay for 1917 is a little bit, maybe a little controversial, but it did get nominated for a Writers Guild.
Which was surprising to
nomination.
me, because we finally saw this movie, and I loved it. I don't think the writing is anything special.
Yeah,
this movie is great because of the directing and
it's the
film
visual.
editing. Yeah.
Yep, it's the visual aspect of it. So it's just because it's gotten a Writers Guild nomination, I think there's a chance that it might fall into one of the last spots. But yeah, I agree. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Marriage Story, Parasite. I think those 3 are locks for sure.
Yeah, and I think, did you say Knives Out? Right, those are the 4.
I don't know if that's gonna be a lock, but it's between that and Booksmart. That'll be probably the 4th spot, I would say.
Okay. So moving into Best Supporting Actress. So Laura Dern, Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson, Jojo Rabbit, Jennifer Lopez for Hustlers. Those are the 3 locks I have. This one was tricky for me for the other 2 spots. I think it could be out of 4 people. I have 4 movies here that could take up these 2 spots. I've got Florence Pugh for Little Women, the woman that played Nai for The Farewell. That's who I have for my 4 and 5. But I think Kathy Bates for Richard Jewell or Margot Robbie for Bombshell could get those nominations as well.
Yeah, Margot Robbie's been getting a lot of love for Bombshell, so I put her in there, and I think she has a better chance than J-Lo. And then, yeah, I agree. Laura Dern, Scarlett Johansson, J-Lo, I think those 4 will be definite, and then I think between Florence Pugh and Kathy Bates maybe for the 5th spot.
No Nai?
It's
more of a want for me.
Yes,
I will admit that.
I would want that. I would love that, but I haven't seen her too many other nominations.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, so
I'm going on the metrics.
Oh, you're okay.
I'm doing that analytics.
You're the analytical. So you're the person though some football teams need to hire analytical skills.
Exactly.
I got you. I'm trying to do that, but I'm mixing in some of my want. That's why I have Nai for The Farewell in here in my 5 spot. So moving into Best Supporting Actor, I think this one is. You can differ for me if you want, but I think this one is fairly locked down with Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yep.
Joe Pesci and Al Pacino for The Irishman.
100%.
Tom Hanks for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I think those 4 are absolute 100% locked in.
Yes.
I would say Anthony Hopkins is 90 to 99% locked in with... I have 2 people that could maybe sneak in there.
Okay.
And Willem Dafoe for The Lighthouse and Jamie Foxx for Just Mercy.
Yeah.
But I do have Anthony Hopkins in for the 5th spot for me.
Yeah, I would agree. Those top 4 for sure. Brad, Al, Joe, Tom. Yep, I think those will all get it. Anthony Hopkins, I think, will be that 5th one.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that one pretty straightforward. So
yeah.
Next up, Best Actress. This one, I think, is kind of the opposite. I don't think it's very straightforward. So we'll see what happens.
I came up with 2 for sure.
Yep, I also have 2 locks.
And the rest, I'm like, we'll see.
Yep, so my 2 locks are Renee Zellweger for Judy and Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story.
Yes.
I don't think any shocker there.
Mm-hmm.
And then for my 3, 4, and 5, I have Awkwafina for The Farewell, Saoirse Ronan for Little Women, and Charlize Theron for Bombshell, but you could see a Cynthia Erivo for Harriet or a Lupita Nyong'o for Us sneak in there.
Yeah, the first 5 that you mentioned, I have them as well, just based on like BAFTA and SAG Awards. But I think there's an outside chance that Cynthia Erivo or Lupita Nyong'o might get their nominations too. I've honestly been very surprised that Lupita has not gotten more credit for her role in Us. She just absolutely carries that movie so good.
She does, and maybe it's because it came out so earlier in the year and it lost some steam.
I think that definitely has something
I wouldn't
to do
even
with
really... I loved her, and I agree with you, but the analytical... I'm putting your analytical hat on here for a second. The only reason I don't have her in a spot, and really the only reason I'm bringing her name up is because she got a SAG nomination. And the SAGs are the biggest indicator for the acting nominations.
Yeah.
So the fact that she got a SAG nomination, I think, means there's some hope that she gets an Oscar nom, but that's really the only
kind of
reason.
an outside chance. Yeah, I agree. What about lead actor?
So lead actor, this one is, again, fairly straightforward. I've got 4 locks. I've got
I do as well.
I got Adam Driver for Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix for Joker, Leo for Once Upon a Time, and Taron Egerton for Rocket Man.
Yep.
And then for my 5th spot, I'm doing it. I'm putting Adam Sandler in for Uncut Gems, but it'll probably be Price for Two Popes.
Yeah, I agree. Price does, and we've seen both of those films. I think he does a good job. I really felt Adam Sandler's character in Uncut Gems had more of a magnetism to him, just like totally out there character. But yeah, Jonathan Pryce is getting a lot of love for his role, so I think that'll probably be the 5th spot.
And I'll admit, I mean, this is such a strong year.
It's a very strong category
for Best Actor, because I mean, you have 4 locks, and we're debating between Adam Sandler and Jonathan Pryce, but you've got people out there like Mark Ruffalo for Dark Waters that I hear is great. Oh, and you got like Robert De Niro, who put in maybe one of the best performances of his career, and he's one of the best actors to ever live, and he's not getting any Best Actor love for The Irishman.
Any attention.
It's insane how big this category is. Or like Eddie Murphy for Dolomite Is My Name. I mean, that's a huge comeback for him, and he's not probably not going to get nominated for it. Best Director, got Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, Sam Mendes for 1917, Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, QT for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Those are my locks. This is probably one of the strongest years for Best Director ever.
Yeah.
So those are my 4 locks. I don't think there's any chance any of those 4 are not getting nominated. And then in the last spot, I've got Greta Gerwig for Little Women.
Yeah, she
better get
deserves
it.
that.
She better.
So much.
I'm worried Noah Baumbach is going to get it instead. If Todd Phillips gets a nomination for Joker, I'm gonna
quit.
I'm gonna quit.
We're gonna quit our Oscar analysis.
Fucking way that Todd Phillips should get a Best Director nomination for that movie.
No.
It should be Greta Gerwig. If Noah gets it instead of her, that would suck in my opinion. But it wouldn't be a travesty like if Todd Phillips gets it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I have the same. I feel like Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, Sam Mendes, those are locks. I think Bong Joon-ho will get it, but part of me just, I don't know, I just have a little hesitation there. And then, yeah, I would really like to see Greta Gerwig in there. I think she's earned it. She deserves it. But, you know, academies don't, haven't. I don't think they've acknowledged her credit. So, I don't know. We'll see if she gets it or
Gotta
not.
break up the boys club. Come on. Last category, Best Picture. So this one's a little tricky. It's up to 10.
Yeah, anywhere between 5 and 10 nominations.
Which is weird. I don't know why they would nominate 8 or 9 instead of just doing 10. I don't know why they do the up to instead of just doing 10. Just give awareness to other movies. But for whatever reason, they don't always do 10. But, I mean, I've got a list of 13 movies
I feel
here.
like that's one of those, like, lose-lose, because it's like, if you say, hey, let's definitely do 10, which is what happened, people are like, oh, but this movie didn't deserve it, like, you should have just
That's
only
fair.
nominated, so it's like, I
It
feel like
depends on the year.
it's
so
a
you're
lose-lose, like, if you say, hey, definitely nominate 10, you know there are going to be ones, people are like, oh, you should never have nominated that, and you say, okay, fine, we'll only do 5, and it's like, what? How could you leave out this movie? So, I feel
That's
like
fair.
it's kind of a happy medium.
I feel like I'm saying that just this year because I think this year was a very strong year in movies.
Yeah.
Like I have 13 movies listed here that I have to decide between 10 spots of. So I think this year, if any, they could probably do 10.
Yeah. So
And it would make
what
sense.
locks do you have?
Let's see. I got Parasite, The Irishman, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Marriage Story. I think those 5 for sure will get nominated. I kind of think that Little Women and Jojo Rabbit will probably, and Joker will probably get, I don't want Joker to get nominated, but at this point I think it just will get nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
So those 8 I think are for the most part locks, and then I would maybe throw in Rocket Man and Knives Out as well. And those would be my 10.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's 10, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think 1917, Irishman, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Joker. I think those are locks for sure. I think Marriage Story, Rocket Man, Parasite, those will probably make it. Anything beyond that, I'm not sure. So I'm kind of in like the seven movies range. Yeah.
I think Parasite will. I think it's got enough steam, or it should.
Like I said, because it's foreign language, I just have this hesitation. That's all. It totally deserves it, but yeah, I'm hesitating on whether it'll get the credit it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, some of the other three I have here: Ford v Ferrari, Two Popes, and Dolomite is my name. I mean,
okay.
Those are all three movies that we haven't seen Dolomite yet, so I guess I shouldn't talk to that one too much. But for Ford v Ferrari and Two Popes, I think if it's any other year, those two would probably get nominated.
No, I agree. It's interesting bringing up Ford versus Ferrari because I've kind of forgotten about that movie. It was so entertaining. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, this has been such a strong year for movies that I feel like, that one's kind of forgettable.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, if it came out last year or 2 years ago, it would have been right up there.
Yeah, so it'll be really, really interesting to see what happens Monday morning. That's what we got for the Oscars. We'll see how close we get, and then I'm sure we'll, break down the actual nominees and start picking who we'll think will win in those categories. But did you have any other, outside of those categories, anything you wanted to bring up?
Probably the only thing, I feel like Roger Deakins is a shoo-in, not only to be nominated, but probably to win Best Cinematography for his work on 1917. And
he got his first win a couple of years ago for Blade Runner 2049.
Okay.
But he'd been nominated like 15 times before that, and it was criminal that he hadn't won before that.
Yeah, the work he did
amazing.
On 1917 was phenomenal.
He's amazing. Yeah.
So good. So I think that's kind of my other shoe-in for one of the, other bigger categories.
Mm-hmm.
I know cinematography isn't huge, but like compared to like sound mixing, sound editing, I feel like that's out there. I feel like John Williams, who did the music for 1917?
Newman.
Thomas Newman. I'm like, it's not Randy Newman. It's his cousin Thomas Newman. I think they'll get nominations for original score. That would be really fun. So
yeah, I think that score was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a quick run through here. So this is Roger Deakins, his nominations before winning for Blade Runner 2049.
Uh-huh.
Shawshank Redemption, Fargo, Kundun, which was a movie by Martin Scorsese about the Dalai Lama.
Oh.
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The Man Who Wasn't There, No Country for Old Men.
Beautiful.
The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. That movie also beautiful.
Yep.
The Reader, True Grit,
Nice.
Skyfall,
Uh-huh.
Prisoners, Unbroken, Sicario, and then he won for Blade Runner 2049. So, I mean, he's made great stuff for the longest time. A lot of Western or neo-Western themes in there. A lot of desert areas. So, yeah, he was amazing for 1917.
Yeah. It'll be fun once we get to recap that movie. That'll be a good one. All right, so that wraps up our Oscar predictions. We will see how things go on Monday when the nominations come out, and then we can make our predictions from there, mention any surprises, snubs that we think might be there. And our next episode, we will be discussing the Adam Sandler drama Uncut Gems, and we'll get into the Best Picture winner from 1952. Is our oldest one yet, right?
I think so.
Yeah, 1952 Best Picture winner is The Greatest Show on Earth. So look for that in our next episode.
So yeah, we'll talk about those movies next time, which will be great. But please like and subscribe to this podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. That can really help us out. So please do so. Leave a 5-star rating. Only 5-star ratings, please. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at OscarReelPod. And yeah, from Matt and Haley, this has been the Oscar Reel Movie Podcast.
Go see a movie this week.